This is the music and drawing experiment. And we're going to have two people draw their inspirations, feelings, reactions, images, and thoughts evoked from a song. And after, we will share our feelings with one another to explore what it looks like to make multimodal connections, being between, in this case, musical expression and visual expression through drawing. And then we're going to see if there's any common themes in our synesthetic experience between these two modes, and maybe if any of these themes can help us understand each other in newer and deeper ways, and how that might relate to intergenerational connections. So that's kind of the intro.
Good.
And would you, Varouj, like to reveal the song that we're listening to?
Okay, so we picked Dave Brubeck, Take Five, which was, I'm not sure, it goes back to the 60s, I think. That was originally composed by Paul Desmond. And so we picked, anyways, with Clara, that song. We're going to give it a shot. We're going to try the Dave Brubeck song. Yeah. Take Five.
Take Five, yeah. I think that it came out on their album Time Out in 1959. And this album has a lot of alternative time signatures, such as 9/8/6/4, and as is in Take Five, 5/4. And these irregular time signatures, I find, have like a different feeling and drive to it. Do you feel the same way, Varouj?
Yeah, it's very kind of rhythmic in the beginning, and there's a melodic part, so it kind of squeezes the notion of time, like, so we're collapsing time and then expanding time. So it's kind of neat that it plays with different rhythms and nuances.
All right, well, I have all my markers right here. I don't know what colors I'm going to use yet. I also didn't really think about what I was going to draw, so I have no idea what's going to happen right now.
What's nice with acrylic is that you could, okay, he's going to scare people, but sometimes I use my finger, because it's like the nice thing with, I don't know, when we listen to the music, for example, you put a dab of, like out of the tube, and then you can kind of like more flow kind of thing. And like, I guess we'll discover that about how color has form and the different nuances.
Awesome. Okay. So I think we're going to listen to this song. I think it's 5 or 6 minutes, if I remember correctly. But different instrumentation, Paul Desmond, his beautiful lines on top of the 5/4 rhythm. And I think that we'll check in just a few minutes.
Right on.
Wow. That was not actually what I was expecting.
Yeah, me too. Completely surprised.
That was oddly difficult. Okay. Well, that just happened. Okay, so first, I think we should talk about our immediate reactions. What did you notice about your mental processing when we're doing that? Were there any unexpected ideas or challenges that emerged? And did you feel like the music helps you tap into a new area of creativity?
Yeah. No, it's I'm quite kind of happily kind of surprised because like the day, like the average person, I guess I was just kind of like go, go, go. You're doing stuff all day, and then suddenly you're slowing down. You're listening to this, and what it did to me, like I think it was physiological because almost my body was in balance, like this weird, like the modality thing we're talking about, how my it was kind of like a harmony where there was, well, music is harmony. So it's kind of like this kind of like morphing of the two elements. And suddenly it was like to be honest, like it was a peaceful feeling. Like it was like kind of like a restful thing, and definitely playful. It was just like kindergarten, like sort of like sitting there and then whatever comes, and then the flows, and then trusting the music, like going with it. They could be like weird notions, but um, yeah, it was very kind of safe, like a safe thing. It was kind of like you're being taken care of, like it's going to take you to a nice resting place.
Sometimes I found that when the music would change, if Paul Desmond was playing a different melody, or when it went into the drum solo, it was more sporadic. I would be frantically trying. I was listening, and then I thought of an idea of to draw, but then by the time I started drawing it, it was already a new thing that was inspiring me. So I felt kind of like I was scrambling. So I didn't actually feel that peaceful in it, honestly. But then there were points where when I was really just trying to draw the rhythm of the music, I did not think at all about what I was doing. And it was more just about the experience of drawing and letting that just be guided by the music more so than thinking about what concept I'm trying to convey.
Mhm.
And that for sure felt like a multimodal thing, because you're kind of surrendering yourself to the expression of the drawing, and how the music is kind of in control about it and not really you, like kind of like improvisation, very similar to improvising music.
Mhm.
So yeah. All right, well, want to show us your picture?
Okay, so what happened was, let's see, let's start. Initially, of course, this rhythm thing just blew me away. The what do you call it? Contrapuntal, contrapuntal as in oppositional melodies. The 3/5, the 4/5, and then the swooping, I guess, swooping or sweeping transition. I think,
The
yeah,
melody.
yeah, it kind of goes. It changes. Like I think you're right. There's a sort of a feeling of unsettling. Keiko likes to use the word unsettling, and then there was this moment of unsettling, and like you're falling off this cliff or something.
Mm.
And then he kind of picks up this really cool melody, which is like, ooh, kind of like honey or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then gets into that really nice, almost like not paradise, but utopian kind of place. So like,
Playful.
yeah, the conflict, I think you're right. There's a conflict sense of like a sort of a fight going on, or I would even say like these three elements are like friction between the rhythms. There's like a notion. Just a general comment, listening to the music, I think one of the exercises versus the production, which is what we're doing, I guess, is you get a different sense for the music and you get a different sense for the drawing. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, I get, because I've heard that tune before, but I got more out of it because of my I guess embodiment, you know, my body, and then like translating that to my own visual signature or something like that. You know, became, if instead of like an obviously an abstraction, but then it became also representational in a way, a little bit. You know, you could say, okay, that may be a person, or um, no, it's really cool.
Okay, this is so weird because there's definitely a lot of similar themes in your drawing and mine.
Okay.
Okay, so this is mine.
Yeah.
And I drew this kind of like piano keys. 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2. And
Yeah.
then I kind of drew the saxophone because I kind of was like, if I want to bring in a subject in it, do I make it the musicians? Or I wasn't, I kind of wanted to because I love the idea of like these cool cat jazz musicians. So I drew the saxophone with this, and then I tried to draw the similar pattern. And then that was at the beginning of the song. And then there is this sense of expansion when the saxophone came in. So then I ended up drawing this.
Mhm.
And but then there was still that drive with the bass, with the 5/4 time.
Mhm.
And then it went into all these like kind of concrete shapes. Um, but then when the melody came in, or when it was da na 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 na, it made me think of like a really playful person. So I drew this little face.
Okay. Jesus.
And his arm is all kind of messed up because I think, like, again, that's kind of the vibe that I got from the 5/4. But then I also put him like going into the melody to describe like maybe the tension between the super melodic saxophone of Paul Desmond, who's beautiful tone and melody, but then also it's like on top of this really the 5/4 unsettling context. So there's like a juxtaposition there. And then this is the drum solo.
Oh my God.
I tried to make it like heavier and darker because he's really like banging on it, you know? And then I think that this is supposed to be Dave Brubeck.
Or is that me? That looks like
Yeah. Could
like a
be.
self, like a portrait, or yeah.
um but then during when I was drawing the eyes, that's when I was trying to draw in time. And then I wasn't thinking about it, and I have no idea what that face means. And then I was gonna draw a smile, but then I was like, even though the song is like kind of happy, it feels still weird. Like,
Yeah.
so that's why it's like a weird thing going on there. And then I wanted to draw the ears open. Originally, I was planning on connecting him with him, but then I this also represents like the rhythm. That's what I found, the rhythm. And then the tie, and I was kind of thinking about how these jazz guys, they just came off so professional. And then right now in my personal artwork journey, I'm trying to draw hands, like fingers, and how they curve at the joints. But then the song was so sporadic, I just wasn't even thinking, and then I just drew this just freaking leaf or something. But then I kind of felt like he with his, I don't know what that is, he kind of going like, you know. And I feel like that's kind of the vibe of the song, where it's not really like deceiving, but it's kind of a trickster song. And then I was scrambling for time, and then when the melody was like do 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 do, maybe it was the quickness in the tone, in the beat, in the notes because there's a lot do 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 do. And then that's when I was wanting to draw like something like in lots of little different, I don't know, subjects or like bits. And but then I ran out of time, and then it was the end of the song, and then I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do something to tie it all together. Do 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 do. So this is supposed to be the main.
Yeah.
Do, do, do. But if we
Wow.
compare our two, it's
Yeah.
definitely similar
Yeah.
themes.
It's funny because I think
Can you
uh,
bring it up a little bit more?
okay, sorry.
And then a little this way?
This way?
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great.
Right. There's a bit of a similarity in like when you were talking about the almost like the fragmentation, because it's like this like a book, you know, you open a book, it's like a code decoding. So we're kind of codifying the rhythm. So it's almost like these secret messages that are revealed.
Yes.
And then I think we both kind of went to a place where kind of like travel or it could be self-reflection. It's almost like this mechanical system of interconnected parts, which I think it's because back to the modality thing that's helping us to get there, because it's kind of like letting go of that kind of like separation. And then I really like the part. It almost looks like a warehouse, like a shed, like on the top part of your and then you've got the safe thing too. Like there's a kind of like a cocoon or a cave like sort of. It's okay to have that, and then how I think I have the same rhythm where it's kind of tying together. You know, like these things are tying together. Or
Yeah, your kind of wispy lines reminded me of my wispy lines. Were you thinking of the saxophone melody?
yeah, and also what was happening, you know, like a vine leaf, you know, there's branches coming out. So you might have the wispy lines. I think your case, you had that wiggle, for example, which is almost like this serpentine thing where my yeah, that's right. My rhythm are more straight, and then I've got this sort of junction going on where you're kind of like being, it's like canoeing. You said you were going to go canoeing, or it's like being on a river. It's like, oh, it's sort of like the water is taking you somewhere.
Yeah.
Uh, Maybe that's where I have. It's like you hit a rock, and then you go, okay, I'm going to go around the rock or something, you know. And
Mhm.
um, yeah, that's really. And then I think the way you captured the 4/5, I made a literal like the 1 2 3 1 2 3, and then a hypnotic, that sense of like dun, 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 dun. I'm like, why is he repeating that so many times? It's like hypnosis or something, you know,
Mhm.
like a trance. Again, it's like jumping mediums, and then part of your brain or your, you know, like waking up that spirit. There's also a feeling of spirit. I think we're both kind of and your color. How many colors do you use? Blue and pink, basically, right? Blue and
Yeah, honestly, originally when I heard this song, I was kind of thinking of blue and green. I
mhm.
don't know really why. Um, sometimes these synesthesia things, it's really hard to understand where they come from. But then when I
Mhm.
was making this, my first color was this bronze Sharpie. Um, I don't know if somehow I felt this color related to the 5/4 feeling. Because it's because bronze is like it's kind of dark, but at the same time it's not really uncomfortable or anything. Most of the time 5/4 sounds weird, but Dave Brubeck somehow makes it sound so easy. And I
Mhm.
think that this is a common theme in our drawings where maybe we try to convey easiness with flowing lines, whereas when things are more like abrupt, there's more like right angle. Because I feel like that's in yours as well. That's kind of something that I think
Yeah.
similar, the sense of right angles, maybe in the rhythm, but then in the melody, these more flowing lines.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really interesting juxtaposition. And it connects a lot to, I guess, the idea of if you can see these contrasting things together, you're able to understand it better because you can compare it to something else.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think that that's really important in general because your mind is comprehending more things at once, and maybe that takes you further.
Hmm. Like
Is
it's a
that
dialect,
from?
yeah,
Yeah, like
dialectical
yeah,
thing.
yeah. It's totally like Hegelian. Um,
Galleon. Yeah, right. Yeah.
yeah.
Dialectics of seeing. Yeah. Anyways, that's it's like the oppositional
Mhm.
notion of contrast.
Maybe we could go more into now the societal lessons that we could learn from this process, um, either into society broadly or as well intergenerational connections as a theme of this year's project.
Hmm. From a sociological, yeah, that's a really good jump to that topic because we're taking from an individualistic approach to a collective as a society. When you read this in a social commentary, you kind of see the almost like villages, like the sense of kind of like during COVID, what did we call it? We called it clusters. No, I forget what the word was, but
Cohort.
cohort. Yeah, something like that, where like they're the seniors or the youth. It's almost like this cultural differentiation of how, like in an urban setting, like in a city, how people are interacting with we're living together. So your neighbor might be feeling a certain way, and then down the street, there's like the businesses are kind of like reacting with COVID differently. So it's almost like this urban or city jazz. I think he goes on a level of, you're right, the individualistic experience. And then because of the collective nature of the composition, because I mean, if you like you were saying about the player versus the instrument, and then the instrument versus the viewer. So who's the authorship? The authorship is about they're the authors, but we're also the authors, right? So we're kind of like authoring that, and also yeah, definitely you could make like, okay, that's interesting, let me think about this. The social, is that what you were asking?
Yeah,
Social
I
element or?
I it's interesting because this kind of goes back to what we were saying before in terms of the contrast.
Mhm.
You wouldn't
Yeah.
you wouldn't be able to like each um form, or I'm not sure, like subject in it or part of it in its different forms of expression, it wouldn't have as much value in and of itself if it wasn't seen with another type. And I feel like that's something that we might find in society. Like there's always going to be people of different ages, and it's okay that there's differences. And life would be very boring if we didn't have differences. But you can it like you can embrace the pros and I guess cons of the different forms all together all at once. Or um, something that I recently heard about the Hegelian dialectic is like seeing both forms or like each side of the synthesis at the same time at once, and then you can almost like tap into a higher contextual awareness. And I think that's kind of the same for different parts of society. Like um older people can recognize the benefits and weaknesses of younger people, and vice versa. It is because that there are differences that the relationship has the ability to go to really unique places in the first place. Because if everybody was the same, you wouldn't be able to go as far. Like the contrast in the different forms is kind of like the medium or the platform for which you can attain higher perceptions and heights. And I think that's the same with humans and like different cultures. And you can riff off one another just like in jazz, and then it's so much more interesting. But then also something that I was thinking about as well recently, and thinking about music as metaphor, when you're playing jazz and you have a song, there's still going to be a bass structure that connects the song the entire time, such as, I mean, you can change key, but everybody's going to know that when the key changes happen. Or even though the drums might go into like weird places in his drum solo where it might feel really loose or something, it's probably still in 5/4. Not, I'm pretty sure. So there's this sense that there's this collective awareness of things that are constant, like the always evolving but something unchanged, or
Changing, yeah. Change is the what is it? Yeah, change is the most as the most constant. The constant is change. Constant change is constant.
Yeah, or like there's an established context that's not changed, such as there is intrinsic value in our relationships.
Right.
And then if differences emerge, but you still always value the relationships, then that's like, once you have those common values, then the conversation can go further, because you know you aren't going to judge one another. You know that, you know, like, and I think that's really applicable to society. And I think that, you know, if those sorts of mindsets could be integrated into other contexts where we do have differences, but we don't want the differences to tear us apart, and we can have more productive conversation. I feel like that's kind of like jazz, where like everybody knows the chords in the song, and then when you improvise, like you're gonna stick to the chord structure. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about.
I think it was Miles Davis said something that you can't break, because he broke the notions of musical structure, and he said you can't break structure unless you know the foundation of music, and then it's almost like giving you permission to break that, because you know, it's like a house, like you can't there's need something to support it, but then you know how it's supported, you know how it's put together, then you can break it, because there's a subliminal, you know, sense of structure, underneath it, you know.
That's that I've like had advice from people in my visual art journey, where it's like, you need to learn how to draw hands properly, you need to learn how to draw faces properly, and then you can break the rules. And at first I was like, nah man, all art is subjective, I can just do whatever I want. But I actually think that it is kind of true. It's similar, like if you're learning how to play jazz, you have to know how to play all your scales. And it's not to say that you can't still create beautiful music if you don't know your scales. But sometimes if you establish a common grounding or something, or just skill set, then that's actually when you go much more further in your art. And in terms of a social context, I feel like all these things get pretty, maybe like not necessarily political, but subjective, because if you're going to suggest any sort of collective values that everybody should hold, it's like that's automatically like, nope, can't do that. That's like, maybe that's, I don't know, totalitarian or communist. But I think that there's certain collective values that you can hold in society that actually have nothing to do with politics and just humanity that humans would benefit from embracing, you know? but I don't know. Do you think that, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's funny because lately in the news, they're talking about the gangs in Surrey, Surrey, British Columbia. So what's happening is that I was listening to the radio, and then one person was making a comment that, I think what we're doing here is just looking at us at the situations like crime or disparity, homelessness, or the city as diverse, as heterogeneous versus and what I think the media, I think the individual within you're living in an environment where you're feeling like I can be kind of like separated from these social issues, but not true because it's the NIMBY thing. You're not in my backyard kind of thing. And this kind of like actually what this is doing is it's saying that it's okay to look at that because it's not a racial or cultural or financial or addiction issues. It's actually a collective issue. We have to solve these problems together. And I love that comment because she just jumped on. She said, "Well, it's not the gangster situation. The gangs in Syria is also a Surrey problem. Like the downtown east side, in Vancouver. That's a Vancouver problem. It's not a downtown east side problem.
Yeah.
I'm sure Calgary has the same thing. It's like, and that notion you're talking about well, Foucault calls it heterotopia. That's another story to bring Foucault in there. But so yeah, that's that third notion totally. That I love that because it's like there's both and option, right? So it's not like one and so you have the third thing, which is kind of like this. So I think the dialectic and then the social separation kind of looks at okay, there's another way of interacting together, and like maybe we don't have the answers, but who cares? It's about dialogue and the plate, so Socrates kind of thing, the questions and all that stuff.
I totally agree with you. I think that the conversation should totally be there, but maybe, as our art would suggest that we found today, the first step is kind of recognizing that you can step back and view these different parts of society or different groups of people, maybe with different agendas or different backgrounds or different forms of oppression, and recognize that if you step back from it and you see it all at once, kind of like a bird's eye view or systemic view, then there's like this, I don't want to say degree of separation because we're in it and the lived experience is very real and like that's really real. Maybe if you step back and you can understand where others are coming from better, then you can get a big enough picture to even start asking the right questions in the first place.
Yeah, even reconciliation, like this whole notion of you're sitting there at a table and then sometimes there's a stalemate, right? Like it's such embedded traumatic story that this would help kind of maybe it's interesting how like First Nations issues and or how maybe society can't solve that maybe, but what we can do is we have ways of experiencing it, and I think this modal stuff or other tools could kind of open up it could be wounds or it could be kind of like solutions or something like that, but it gives opportunities for individuals to participate. It becomes like across the board, like it's a common ground sort of thing, I mean, we're not going to solve that, but I think what's great with this is I think the frustration happens within the community issues. Well, I can speak personally because it's like we get stuck with why is that happening, and then you go like, the city makes a certain decision to do that. I'm getting into city politics, but I mean, politics in itself is such a weird kind of like, how does it work, right? And it's maybe if they had a sketch pad, politicians would be more effective.
Honestly, well, when we reviewed that paper on collaborative drawing, one of the things that the researchers found, they were doing this with children, and on the topic of social justice, but they weren't analyzing the drawing for the aesthetic value or the meaning in the drawing of what the child and adult drawing together, collaborative drawing, were trying to communicate, but what the process was bringing. And it's more about the process. That's how I feel. Like, I'm not like I don't really think this has that much like
aesthetic value.
like aesthetic value. But as
would you hang that on your wall?
yeah, I'm like, do I want to post this on my art page? Like, probably, like but it's more so about the process and what you learn from it.
Back to seniors, like I think one of the other thing with frustration, maybe related to jazz and drawing, is that what the invisible, like I think we talked about that at one of the talk, the ethics of intergeneration, of the invisibility factor of like what is. I think what we're doing here, we're making it visible. And I think that's another kind of interesting part, because then we're kind of like, oh yeah, well, it's embedded in my psyche. It's like, I'm going, holy sorry, holy yes. And then it's like, is that what my psyche's about? Like it's visible, but it's cool. It's like, it's not that bad,
Well, Keiko talks a lot, our director, about meaning making.
Yeah.
And I'm very into this sort of exploration where you draw something abstract and then you read into it after, and it's not to suggest it's objective, that the right angles represent my structure part of my mind, and then the whips before like represents my dreams. Like, it's not necessarily like that, but it's just a platform for conversation that you wouldn't have had if you didn't do the conversation.
When you go to a gallery, you look at a painting, and then you have these headphones. Sometimes you go to, and they tell you, well, this, like a Rembrandt. I'm like, I don't want to know. Like, you throw that away.
Yeah.
You don't look at the title, right? Like, you just go, like, I just want to make my own story. Or some people, maybe they like that, but they just want to be told, well, that mountain there is representing blah, blah, and there's a path leading to a lake. Oh, the guy was, I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, that's another thing, like people's different approaches to how they want to connect with art. I think it's all good, man. This was a really fun activity. I really like how there's some aesthetic similarities. Okay.
What was your t-shirt about? I still didn't understand the is it an image on your t-shirt or just
it's a keyboard?
Oh, it's a keyboard. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So you got a saxophone, jazz, all the instruments are there.
I dressed for the occasion.
Right on. Okay.
All right. Have a great rest of the weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
No problem.